Welcome to the Art of the Game podcast. We are back for season 2. I'm Cass, and here for the ride are my co-hosts and co-founders, Reese and Ryan.
We started this podcast off the back of our business, Sport Design Australia, with the purpose of exploring the intersection of the sporting and creative industries. We wanted to bring you the biggest names in sports design and content excellence.
Our guests this season are providing us with perspectives from all across the world, giving us insight into the artistry behind content and how it influences every aspect of the game. Whether you are a sports enthusiast, a designer, or a creator, Art of the Game will have something for you.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Art of the Game. Today we have a really exciting one for you guys. It's going to be focused purely around the inaugural Sport Design Australia Awards, which were released last week. We're hoping you've already seen it, but if you haven't, this is the perfect time to jump in and understand exactly what the awards are, why we're doing them, how they came to be, and we're really excited about filling a gap within this space in terms of recognition for content creators. So as you would all know from hopefully listening to us across the years, Ryan, Reese and I have spent the last decade in this space, and it's very, very clear to us that there's a need for more recognition, value attribution and visibility of great creatives in the sports industry. And it's part of our mission at Sport Design Australia to change that and ensure that we're recognising the network and building the industry up as a whole. So here we are, the launch of our first ever Sport Design Australia Awards. We're really hoping this is the beginning of something really big for the industry moving forward. We're excited to kind of chat you through it and give you some more details. So the episode today will give you a bit of an insight into why we are excited about the awards, the categories you can submit into, and any additional bits of information on the categories that might help you decide where you want to submit, which award you want to submit for, how you want to submit, all the juicy details. And then we'll have a general discussion, I think, which is important to do at this point in time, about why it's important for us to do this in the industry and what it means to celebrate those who are driving real change in this space domestically. So Ryan, a lot of talking from me, but hello, welcome. It's just the two of us today. I know you're also, super passionate about this small part of what we can do for the community and our network. So firstly, it'd be great to understand from you what the vision is for the Sport Design Australia Awards, and what you'll hope it'll achieve for, us and the industry in the short and long term.
Hello, Cass. It's good to be back on the Art of the Game podcast. We love recording these. Excited to talk about the Sport Design Australia Awards. I thought it's worthwhile talking about and letting people know that we really started talking about this in 2022. And it was cool to kind of go back and see what kind of work we'd done in 2022 to get ourselves ready to launch. And, obviously we're trying to build and grow the Sport Design Australia business. And so we had to kind of move it down the pecking order a little bit before we felt it was right to launch. But it's exciting that we'd been thinking about this for the last couple of years and we're finally able to bring it to life. So yeah. I think that was a pretty cool moment of reflection.
Absolutely.
And I think, all the discussions that we've had around why we're doing this and the rationale as to why we wanted to bring this to life. Ultimately, it's around recognition, right? There's a lot of awards that are out there and a lot of different, awards that kind of touch slightly in this space, but there's nothing dedicated to the creatives who are working day in and day out from a sport perspective. And we felt that community is growing and the emphasis on great creative is really shifted. So it's about time they were recognised.
Yeah.
In the short term, it's really around three things. It's building excitement within that community, like giving sports creatives something to aspire to and be excited about each year, seeing their work, their colleagues' work and the rest of the industry's work up in lights. The second is the recognition piece, so recognising really great individuals, but also recognising those really great creative teams. We've got some unreal creative teams. Some are small, some are big, but to be able to recognise the individuals within those teams and the teams themselves is really important. And then third is like showcasing how much it's changed and the emphasis of sports creative in the industry. It's shifted quite considerably in the last couple of years, specifically across social, but also more broadly, across a whole bunch of different mediums. Yep. Then in the long term, again, it's kind of three things. The first is how do we focus on the education around the art of sports creative and the importance of really great sports creative? how do we put more emphasis on resourcing and budgets given to sports creatives. And then the third is showcasing a connection between, really strong, great creative and then fan engagement. And if you look at any of the really strong creative teams, whether it's locally but also globally in sports, you see how really great content resonates with audiences. Comments like media team needs a raise, social teams on fire, those kind of things, you can literally make a connection between the really strong creative and how audiences receive that creative. So over the long term, it's, hopefully we start to kind of build that connection and we're less worried about what's the ROI on that piece of creative.
Yeah, that's a super important point. And I think, I have a few things to say on that in terms of, we can't really, and we've discussed this outside of the award capacity as well, but just generally across the business and trying to figure out how we fit into the market and what, our real purpose is and mission is there. But it's really hard to quantify quality creative and quality design. And it is really hard to put a number on it. But as you said, there is that element of fans just have this gut feeling about, and this just overwhelming feeling about what is great content, and they're willing to kind of make a comment, have a reaction, have an emotional connection to that piece of content. But it's really hard then to kind of take that and put it into something, in some sort of metric or some sort of measurement that says this is why we invest this much money in creative and quality content. And from my point of view, quality creative and quality design is just not something we give enough airtime to. We don't really, unpack the value of that and what it does for a business. But I think it comes down to a few things, in a world where, everyone can almost everyone can kind of be a designer with the accessibility of Canva templates and Adobe suites, which I think is great for the industry. I think it allows people to kind of have access and an entry level into it and therefore spark a passion for creative. But I just think we fall short as an industry sometimes on realizing, what it is to take that to an extra level, and having, people who are genuinely really great designers and have really crafted their skill set in this space and noticing the difference of those two. And, we've spoken about it before, but audience, customers and fans see the brand that you designed for them to see, right? So if it's what your creative teams have firstly ideated and concepted and brought to life through their specialist skills and techniques, that's the gateway for any transaction with a brand. So whether it be a payment or a reaction, tune in, an eyeball, registration, or whatever that may be, it begins with the visual you present to them, and that's the form of your brand. So yeah, I feel like that's such a powerful argument for why quality design and creative, it is required, because that literally is sometimes the first iteration you'll have with someone who you want to become a fan and someone to invest in your brand. I think we've definitely had a recent groundswell in businesses looking to level up in the space though, and I think that there's definitely potentially a shift, and maybe it's just because we're living and breathing it day in and day out that we're noticing it, but there really is, I guess, that desire for brands and sporting organizations to get that cut through and ensure that, they are making quality content. And I mean, I guess I probably should just mention that when I say, quality creative and quality design, I don't mean the highly produced pieces of content and the polished pieces. I'm not saying go and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on, a cinematic kind of version, but quality for us. And I think it's really interesting to kind of look at it from this lens rather than always an ROI lens, but it's quality is design that's well considered. It's technically put together. It's, part of a consistent brand and visual identity. And it does drive that emotion and make your fans and audience feel something. And that comes back to that point you were mentioning around if they really love it, they're going to tell you that they love it. But it's really nice now that they tell you that they love it and they recognize that there's someone really great behind that design or creative that's brought that to life, whether it's a team or an individual. And for us, it's really about trying to unpack that and bring those people to the forefront, recognize them and make them part of that celebration of success for what a brand is putting out into the market. So yeah, I think that was just an important kind of point to make, and I think something that we've spent a fair bit of time trying to grapple with and trying to put into words, and I think it comes down to fans and audiences can see through the crap. They can really realize that there are Like there are brands that put in effort to make sure that they're having a really great experience with them. And I think that is something we should do as a brand and as an organization. If you're going to ask your fan or customer or an audience to, put effort into you and turn up to a game or buy a ticket or, react or engage with a piece of content, then the least you can do is put the same effort in back. And yes, I think that they were just a few points that I wanted to make just off the back of that in terms of, really unpacking what we mean by quality design and quality creative and why it's so important that we're investing in it in a sporting capacity.
Yeah, I think just adding to that, like there's levels to the game, and when you spend enough time in it, you start to see those levels. But I think the challenge that we've recognised within the industry is we are an industry that is so short of time to be creative and time to think critically. And so often we are stuck in our own bubbles and silos of what we're doing and what we need to do, that we don't really look outside or look to see what we can do better. Unfortunately, it's often a conversation of how can we just do what we did last year and just refresh it. And it is unfortunate that teams just don't have that time to really look outside of what they're currently doing to kind of press and improve their output. And you can tell the teams that, spend some of that time, they carve that time out because it's such an important component of them creating content.
Yeah.
You can definitely see how those levels are separated.
Yeah.
I wanted to touch on your point as well around, we're talking about, fans being able to tell or they get excited about that really great creative. And we had Greg Walter on the podcast just recently, and he coined this term slingshotting fans' enthusiasm. And it's like making sure you're putting yourself in the mind of the fan and when they're going to kind of engage or receive that piece of content. And your goal is to kind of slingshot their already heightened levels of enthusiasm. So how do you get them even more excited, even more pumped, even more, passionately connected to your audience? And I think that's what really great creative is doing. And that's what we want to recognize.
Yeah, I love that. I absolutely agree, because I think as a sporting fan, generally we're all heightened and we're all excited. We're all really passionate already. So you're not actually trying to find emotion. You really are just trying to make that emotion go further and be better. And yeah, I love that. I think it's a great piece of advice and definitely what we're trying to recognize. And I think in terms of the awards and how they're also like set up in this way is that, you've mentioned a few times that there are we see that the teams that do a really great job with it, the teams that really invest in content. But I think the reason that we've done the categories that we've done, and we can talk about those a bit later, but there is definitely an element of team, but there's definitely, and as we know from experience and working, deep within these design teams, there are really passionate and powerful individuals in there that are driving that conversation and making sure that those that are making decisions on budget, on creative sign-off or, resourcing and things like that are aware of how important this is as a concept and how much that there needs to be like an investment in this space. And that's why I think the awards have come to be, because those individuals are usually then put on the back burner behind the facade of a team, but they themselves are really, driving huge change in this industry. So it needs to be recognised. And I think that probably comes down to the next piece that we wanted to quickly chat about is like, how did the awards come to be, and what gap are we wanting to fill? You've mentioned a few of it up in the goals section, but yeah, why do you think that this is like a really great time for us to have these awards? And what is the major gap we're trying to fill by having them?
Yeah, if you think about why we started Sport Design Australia and why Reece kind of started showcasing creatives both here in Oz but also globally, it was all around that recognition and showing value to an area of the business that, as you mentioned, has been neglected. And to be frank, there's been a lot of people who've had to push shit up a hill for a long time to get the value that they deserve internally for really great sports creative and investment into content. So first and foremost, it's really around how can we get those people working in and around sports creative to feel valued, to feel like they're an important part of their team and their business as a whole. The second, gap that we wanted to fill is there is a bit of a gap in the market to have a space for those people who, are kind of a little bit behind the scenes, who, potentially are just an Instagram handle, or you actually don't even kind of get to see them, to kind of put them into the spotlight. And that's been something that again is kind of slowly shifting. We're starting to see recognition of creatives, whether it's photographers, videographers, graphic designers, motion artists, starting to kind of come out of behind the scenes. But it's really around putting a spotlight on them and putting a spotlight on their work and showcasing them in the way that other people are showcased, marketers, people in media, your more traditional creatives as well. So it's being able to pull those talented individuals from behind the curtain and really give them a platform to be celebrated for.
Yeah.
And then the third is just the award categories in themselves. Like, other award programs kind of don't really get too specific into the sports design and sports creative community, and we've felt that they're a little vague and more focused on like those big corporate businesses that are spending millions of dollars each year on their marketing program. So this was very much for us to get like really specific around that community. And we spent a lot of time working with some of the creatives we work with to understand what are some of the key categories that we can build out for this awards in this first year. And hopefully, we're fingers crossed, people really jump into this, and as we build year on year, we can bring in new categories and build out the awards to be even more robust and to kind of put more and more teams in the spotlight as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think, and the gap that we've kind of mentioned a little bit is obviously about how we help and foster like bringing individuals out in the spotlight. But I think, we definitely don't want to be penalising, teams for making really great hires and doing a really great job in bringing in the right skill sets in order to amplify and better the way that the team output happens. So I think that's why we've got a team section, because it is really about celebrating those that are able to kind of bring together a collection of all different parts, really cohesively invest in the space and do a really great job. So I think it's really important to recognize that we're not just trying to like pull out these individuals and make them heroes of brands and be like, just because you're the Brisbane Broncos and you've done a really great job, it's not because of one individual or a couple of individuals in that team. It is probably a bit of the fact that you've got a really great skill set sitting under the team, but also you've come together as a cohesive unit, which allows you to then not only, ideate, concept, design, but also the element of like getting it out there and researching what fans want, having a great message, having great social platforms, having great support from top to bottom. So I think that is really important to mention as well, that we definitely don't want to just be like saying, you shouldn't be working for a team, you should be an individual and you should be a freelancer and you should be, highlighted as, the face behind all this really great work. But there is definitely a place for both. And that's why I think once we get into it in a sec, we can chat about why we've got the three categories that we've got. And I think that is kind of a good summary as to why they're falling out in that way. Yeah, is there anything else we want to kind of chat about up front? I think that's pretty good as an overview in terms of why we're having them and what we want from them.
I think just touching on we also wanted to make these really accessible. So, we didn't want to put a fee on people submitting to be part of these awards. We also didn't want to make the process like an hour long to submit one award entry as well. Like, we know people are short on time. Like, that's literally one of the main problems that we're dealing with in this industry. So we wanted to make it super accessible, very easy for individuals and teams to kind of submit.
Yeah.
This year we're not going to do an awards night, but again, that's, hoping that this kind of really kicks off. It's something that we can do as we build over the years, is like have that kind of individual moment that people can get really excited about each year and, get dressed up and go along and network with their peers and meet people that they might be, connected with online but have never met with in person, and have those opportunities to kind of grow and network within the community as well. So definitely something for us to think about, but it's really going to be down to how the industry gets behind this first year as to how far it grows year on year.
Yeah, absolutely. We're kind of putting it out there and giving people the platform, but we need everyone to kind of embrace it and love it as much as we do, so we can make it what we know that it can be for the industry and motivate the creatives in this space and build a network of people that can kind of celebrate and support each other as well. So let's just jump into the awards themselves and give everyone a quick overview of the categories that we've got available and the type of awards that sit underneath each. I think it's important to note that, we've done this based on being quite specific and quite granular in the elements of sports design that we know teams and individuals are focusing on in terms of their output and what they feel passionate about creating and things like that. So I think the main point of difference is that you won't see a lot of the vague categories that you see in usual awards where it's like, I'm not really sure how to submit into this category. I'm not really sure if I fit this category. I feel like we've done a pretty good job of being like, you will know once you read the category whether the work that you're doing submits into this or fits in this, or if it doesn't, you'll find one that it does. So do you want to give everyone a quick overview of the three, I guess, overarching sections and then the awards that sit underneath each?
Yeah, cool. Before we do get into them, it's probably worthwhile pointing out we did have a heap more award categories when we started, and we've tried to be really conscious of going too broad and really narrowing in. We'd love to have awards in there specifically around photography and videography and video editing and things like that. Definitely see those coming in due time, but for the purposes of this first year, we really wanted to kind of focus in and we were really specific with that. So if anyone does have any questions as to why they weren't, award categories that were included, that's the reason why. We did break them out into 3 category groups. So the first is team. Team is all around recognizing the creative team responsible for delivery. And there's 8 awards in the team category, so that's the most amount of awards that we've got in there. And we'll quickly run through them. The first is Best Art Direction for Team Branding. So pretty self-explanatory, but how has the kind of team branding art direction come to life over the course of a season? The next is Best Social Media Template Suite. So let's look at your social media template suites and how they've kind of been built with a visual identity, some consistency across the season. The next is Best Campaign Execution for a non-game day. So that's anything from a campaign perspective that's not related to game day. Similarly, for a Best Graphic Series that's not related to game day. The 5th one is the Best Graphic Series for a game day. So taking a look at how teams have approached game day. What does that series look like? We know that game day's been, such an important piece of creative and way for teams to differentiate themselves. We put out the NFL's first week of game day creative, and all 32 teams went really hard at that, and people really kind of got excited by that as a point of reference. So we know game day is really important. The next is a sponsored series, Best Sponsored Series. So how you're mixing creative with sponsor requirements. Again, this is going to be a category that we think will grow and grow over the next few years with, more brands wanting to play in that space, and creative's getting a lot more clever and innovative around how to bring brands into that creative experience without removing the essence of the content and the desired effect for the audience. The 7th is Best Visual Game Day Experience. So what's that? Really striking game day experience. And then the final one is Best Innovation in Multimedia. So who's being really innovative from a overarching team perspective.
Yeah, awesome. I think that's a great overview. And I think the non-game day and the game day specifications is something that's like probably, just wanted to call out a little bit more as well. And the fact that we know there's a whole focus on executing around game day. It's like a bit of it's like a buzz kind of, not a buzzword, but like a buzz asset, I guess, now in the sports creative industry are the game day promo pieces. So we thought, having that separate to kind of graphic series is across a non-game day. And what we mean by that is things like milestones and stats and other interesting pieces that people, signings and debuts and stuff, they're all really important for us to have a look at and celebrate. But putting those against like the game promos where people spend a lot more time and investment and build these out as really like bespoke elements didn't feel right because it felt like they were going to get lost in that. So having a non-game day and a game day separation allows for those other pieces that are really critical and done really, really well to not have to compete against the game day suite in that sense. And so that's probably the reason why we've got the two separate things there. And I think as we mentioned before, the team section is really about celebrating those that have come together, like all a collection of people coming together in order to make sure that there's a really great visual output for the team across the season. And then we know that underneath that, there are all these elements, commercial elements, membership elements, social elements, ticketing elements that all come together. So hopefully there's enough differentiation in those categories there for people to be able to submit across all of those business units and figure out a way that they can enter themselves into there. So yeah, I think that's a really great overview of those ones, and definitely don't see any other award categories doing any other award programs have categories this specific. So yeah, we're really excited about seeing what can come through.
Nice explanation there, Cass.
Thanks.
The next lot of awards are the creator awards. So these are very much around like the specialists. We recognize that there's a lot of work, a lot of mastery involved in being top tier in these categories. And so this is around recognizing the individual creators. And that could be individuals who are working as freelancers or running their own businesses, working in the sports space, or it could be individuals within teams. We just wanted to kind of showcase a few of these categories because we do know how much dedication is required in these. So the 4 categories that we've got in the creator awards is the best use of animation. We've got the best use of illustration. And I think illustrations, like for me, I love illustration, and there's so many different variations of illustration as well that we've seen. We've played around with some illustration ourselves and, working with a number of creatives in that space. I'm really keen to see how the illustration category unfolds because I think there's going to be some really cool submissions in there.
Yeah, agreed.
The third is best use of motion graphics. Like, again, such a vital piece of sports creative from, social experience through to digital and then, running right through to that game day experience. That motion graphics can just add so much value to the audience's experience. And then the fourth is best use of topography. I think, every time we talk about topography, it always feels like it's the last thing that anyone really talks about.
So unsexy.
It does feel so unsexy when we're, talking about it, but it's so critical. It can really make or break a piece of creative. So we know there's some masters out there of typography, so we want to have a category to recognize them as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think you've definitely touched on the fact that, it's really about us kind of giving a space for those that spend, like these are probably the 4 key areas which take the most mastery and dedication to the skills in terms of graphic design and picking up, Canva templates and Adobe suites and being, entry-level self-taught. I feel like you're not kind of creating this kind of content with the excellence that the experts are doing it at the moment. So I think this is definitely a space where we can kind of, it's not an exhaustive list by all means, definitely not, to say that you're not a great creator unless you're creating in these 4 categories, but these are the ones that we feel like have enough differentiation from the award categories that we've already seen, but also really celebrate being a master and a specialist in your field in a space of sports design that's probably not always heroed and showcased at an individual and at a skill set level. So yeah, this one is extremely exciting. And I think for the individuals and creators that spend a lot of time in this space and don't get recognition, I will feel seen and heard, and absolutely they should. So please make sure that if you're designing in any of these elements that you're definitely jumping on and putting your hat in the ring, because as you mentioned, I'm definitely keen to see how they unfold in this iteration, but I think these are the 4 that, again, that will evolve in the coming years and be really, really competitive from a sports design point of view. So, yeah, creator, get on board.
Love it. I think we should start tagging some of the creators that we like their work of so they can get a nudge and make sure they're submitting.
And anyone that's listening that knows a great creator should also tag that creator and make sure that they get a submission in.
Definitely spam them with it.
Spam them.
Okay, and then onto our last set of awards, which is the MVP. Now, we couldn't not have a sporting reference for the top tier awards that we're about to go through. These awards are all around the top creators, the top creative teams, and we've got 4 categories within the MVP award. So The first is emerging talent in design. And this is a hard one because I feel like there's like so many emerging creatives in the design space. And like how many years can you be an emerging creative until you're an established creative?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's yet to be seen, but I think that's a really cool one to recognize some of the people that are, maybe new to the category or, have only just kind of really got their feet under the desk in terms of like sports creative. But that's the first one, emerging talent in design. The second is innovation in sports design. This is really for those that are just pushing the boundaries. It could be new styles, new techniques, new formats, integration of different mediums. This is really around doing something different that we haven't seen before. It's hard to do that. So we want to make sure that we're recognising those people who are being innovative in sports design. Mm-hmm. The third is independent sports freelancer, the best independent sports freelancer. Now, this is my tip for what's going to be the most competitive MVP category.
Yeah.
There are a lot of quality independent sports freelancers. So I think this one, for the judging panel, this one's going to be the tough award to give out. I think there will be a lot of healthy competition in this category.
I think this one just allows for the ones that potentially feel like they may have been left out in the creator space, specifically around their niche and their skill set in terms of the photographers and the videographers and, the social teams and the social creators. They're obviously, from a creator point of view, we weren't able to include them in that category, but I think from an MVP point of view and this best independent sports freelancer allows all those people to kind of submit and come through the process because, whilst we don't recognise, certain skill sets across the rest of the awards, it's definitely important that we know, that we acknowledge that there are freelancers out there doing an amazing job across video and across photography and across the whole landscape of design. And I'm really excited to see who puts their hat in the ring for this. And if you feel like you're not sure, throw it in because we feel like this category is one that we have an idea around the criteria for, but I feel like it can be so much more expansive than that. And we'd love to see, the breadth of people that are putting their hand up for this kind of freelancer award.
Definitely. And then that brings us to our final award in the MVP awards, which is the Sports Design Team of the Year.
Also going to be highly competitive, I would say.
Yeah. I can already think of a few that would definitely be up there on the podium.
I agree.
And this is definitely going to be around recognising that team effort, all the different components of the team, both the creative and the non-creatives as well. Like it's really important to recognise the people that might be leading those teams who aren't potentially on the tools or maybe aren't as involved in the creative side of things, but who are enabling their team to do what they do. And that's just as important as having really great creatives is the facilitation of creative teams. So this one's going to be a really interesting one. And I'm hopeful that we get teams that are kind of outside of the traditional, rugby league and AFL kind of teams. And we start to see some other smaller teams who are punching above their weight, who put their name forward for this. This one's going to be a really exciting one for us. And I can't wait for it either.
Yeah, I think these ones also, maybe we can have a look at how we do that in the next few weeks of entries being open. But, there are people who are probably shy to say that they're in these categories and put their name forward. So maybe we need to include an element of nomination or submission on behalf of someone that you really admire in this space, and we can have almost like a people's choice version of these. Because I know that there are some that are really great behind the camera, but probably not so much in terms of recognizing themselves as really great at what they do. And often we speak to them and we tell them how great they are, and they're just so shocked by the validation of that. So yes, maybe as an iteration of the entry process, we look at a nomination piece. So stay tuned on that. We might do that and get that out to everyone, so we can make sure that when we are judging these MVPs, we're actually judging it based on the best of the best and who the industry feel should be recognized, and not reliant so heavily on those that are willing to put themselves forward. as well. So stay tuned for that. We might make an amendment there. But
Nice.
I guess a few other helpful bits of information before we wrap up. The awards are open now. We'll link all the details in all the show notes and things, but you can get the details on our socials, LinkedIn, Instas, and on the website to find the details. The award entries will close on October 18th, pending that everything goes smoothly, and we'll keep an eye out around how teams and leagues and individuals are going across really hectic finals period. So we'll stay close to that and make sure that we do give you guys enough time to submit if that's the case. So please send through any feedback on that in case you need more time. Entries are open to residents of New Zealand and Australia only at this point. Obviously, hopefully this isn't the only time we do this, and we can look at including some kind of international awards in there as well. But at the moment, New Zealand and Australia only, and there are criteria documents for each of the awards we've spoken through. We only gave you a real top-line view of what they are, but they're on the website, and through all of the associated links, you'll find the award criteria document, which will unpack the kind of why you should be submitting it each and what you need to actually submit to be qualified for those award categories. So yeah, I guess in terms of a wrap up, we're really here to celebrate you guys and the contribution that you make to the sports industry through your incredible talents. We'd love for you to be a part of the awards 2024, and we obviously welcome any feedback on the process and the categories in order to make sure that we can better this going forward. But we really want the awards program to be something that's truly aspirational for the industry and the sports creative community. And the only way we can do that is with your support. So yeah, please take the time if you can in the next few weeks. Tag anyone that you are inspired by, help each other out, get your submissions in. If you're a team environment, try and give someone the time to submit this and pick up the workload for them so they can get it done. Yeah, there's no point having awards if we don't have the best of the best submit. So the validity and the credibility of the awards is really up to you guys and who submits. So please have a go and reach out to Reece, Ryan, or I, either via our personal LinkedIn's or Sport Design Australia for any questions. We'll be happy to help. But we look forward to seeing your submissions.
The time is now, guys. This is the time. Get them in.
Do it. Great. We're super excited, guys. And yeah, please get submitting. And yeah, we can't wait.
Nice. Good job, Cass.
Thanks, Rye.
Peace.